right, thank you everyone first and foremost for coming here to listen to the two of us this afternoon. I know there's a very interesting choice of presentations to come to, so I really appreciate that you've made it here. Hopefully you're therefore not going to regret that. I think we've got a really interesting story to talk about today, which is all about something called GeoConnect. Now, most of the talking today is going to be done by this gentleman here, Paul Meredith from Thames Water, but I'll just give a little bit of a brief introduction before we start, so you understand the sort of whys and the wherefores, and in particular why I'm standing here. So I'm Stephen Crompton. I'm the CTO for Group BC, and really the easiest thing for those of you who don't know about Group BC is just really to explain our history by our customers. A lot of names there I'm sure you can see which will be familiar names, and if I was getting it down to its essence, our customers tend to break into those two categories. So the work that we do is in this area that we now call the built environment. We're involved throughout information management in the life cycle of assets in the built environment. And we have customers who are both owner-operators, such as Paul at Thames, and also those in delivery, the likes of Costain, Balfour Beatty, and so on as main contractors. So, and I stress that our core business is around managing information about assets, something you may otherwise know as BIM. And you will have seen on that opening slide the words geo and the word BIM, and that is about what today is all about. So a little bit about the relationship between Thames Water and ourselves. We've known each other a fair while. Paul will go into a little bit more of the sort of the specifics, but I think for the purposes of this, it's as much about the nature of our relationship. So it's very much been a collaboration between the two companies, not just because we're next door to each other, but I think because also we share a desire to try and focus on change for the better. So Paul has continually not just taken what we have, configured it and then used that, but has actually come to us with new challenges, new propositions, and said, is this something that we can work together on to provide new solutions that will really help him and potentially our other customers. So it's been about driving innovation, and out of that we've actually created a few products together now which are well known among our customers. And in terms of what we're going to talk about today, that it really makes Thames and Paul a very natural fit for GeoConnect. And in fact, such is the case that Paul was already having similar conversations himself, as you'll talk about, as we were in this area. So like minds and all that. We are here today talking about GeoConnect, and this is one of those areas where three are better than one. We were presented with a challenge by the market, by our customers, which was about these two disparate fields of asset information and geospatial information. And indeed, in fact, it was an opportunity that was brought to us originally by our friends at PCSG through an encounter with OS. And it became very quickly apparent that these two things were basically different sides of the same coin, as some would say. It's all about capturing information about assets at just different levels of spatial information, but ultimately to support decision making. And so on the basis of that, we set about a research project together looking at how we could bring these two worlds together and really providing the expertise where the three of us could. So we, as a technology partner, leading platform within this world of BIM, CDEs, asset lifecycle information, OS obviously peerless when it comes to the currency of their information, geospatial mapping information, but also other data, as we learned through this 2 years from the Ordnance Survey, and as we said before, PCSG, who Mark Bew is the name of the PCSG's owner. Really, what we're doing in Level 2 and BIM has all been spearheaded by Mark and the people he works with. So, you couldn't get a better team, I think, to come together to tackle this. Now, we're now going to move on to Paul. Paul's going to talk about what, as a result of the three of us coming together and working with him, we were able to do.
Right, well, thank you, Steve, for that glowing introduction. Okay, so I just want to spend about 30 seconds putting Thames Water in context for you. Some of you may know us for good or maybe for bad. We've got an ongoing capital programme of about £1 billion a year. We deliver infrastructure projects into the highway, into rural environments, into urban environments. They're new sewage treatment works, they're new water treatment works, they're upgrades to those facilities in the main. We're laying new mains and new sewers, we're doing pumping stations, all right? All that is about £1 billion a year. The projects vary from anything from about 100,000 to about 50 million, all right? That's the sort of scale of projects which we're trying to deal with. We're involved in programme management, project management, planning, design, construction. Less so with the construction. We have partners who do that in the main for us, but certainly a lot of the planning, the civil, mechanical, electrical engineering, control engineering, all of that is delivered these days by a joint venture of which Thames is a part called 820. So that just, I hope, puts Thames in, or the part of Thames I represent, in context. The need for GeoConnect is quite interesting. If you make some early decisions and get them right, the risk which you have to carry through on a project reduces significantly. You can carry those decisions through, and the later you make them, the more expensive they become when you do make them, particularly if you need to change them because as a result of some poor information or information which you weren't able to get correct at the very early beginning of the project. And ultimately, of course, it can end up in a very bad place with the man with the wig on, and none of us want that. The little gentleman down on the right are having a bit of a conversation, and I'm sure some of us have been there. You get on site, you've built something, and all of a sudden, that's not what I thought I was going to get. That's not what I want. You haven't built what I designed, and all those sort of conversations end up in quite an awkward place. Project risks then. Project risks come from all sorts of places. Environmental risks. You go digging up the bluebells in a wood, and that's not good. You go, perhaps it is, I don't know, depends on your point of view, I suppose. But you go disturbing the hedgehogs and the rabbits and the flora and the fauna and all that sort of thing. All good stuff. People are not very keen on you doing that, and you can end up in a pretty bad place if you do that. Third parties, people don't like you trampling over their land with the JCB for some reason, I don't know why. They get very upset. Legal people get very precious about, you mustn't go there, you mustn't do this, mustn't do that. There's archaeology, okay? That's another thing which we come across quite a lot. We don't really know off the top of our heads where all the archaeological sites are. That information is out there, absolutely. It's in the public domain, but you've got to go and find it. And where do you find it? How long is it going to take you to find it? Boundaries are another issue for us. Which local authority boundary are we working within? Who owns what? Which constituency are we working in? Which MP have we got to deal with? All these are risks to the project. And you don't have to solve them at the beginning, but the earlier you solve them, the better it is. You may not solve them in a good way, but at least your project is then aware that they've got to carry this risk through and they've got to deal with it. And on the pictures on the right are some of the interested people. The SSSI enforcement police, for instance, are very vociferous in protecting their corner, and that's absolutely fine. I mean, they're there for a reason, to make sure that naughty people like Thames Water don't go trashing the environment. Data sources then. I've touched on this, on the provenance thereof. Data sources are out there. They're in libraries. They're on the internet these days. They're in all sorts of books and wonderful places you can go and have a look. And that information is as disparate as you like to make it. And the provenance of that data is a bit questionable in some cases. It's on Wikipedia. Oh, that's a great source of information, isn't it? No one's going to trounce you on that. How old is the data? Was it last year? Maybe that's okay. Was it last century? Maybe that's not quite so good. So for all those reasons, we were interested in working with BC to bring on GeoConnect. So what are the options then? Well, we could do nothing. We just carry on as we are, carrying those risks, hoping for the best. We could employ somebody else to do it. There's lots of little companies out there only too happy to take pound notes out of your wallet or £5 notes out of your wallet probably, and do the job for you, you know. But actually, there must be a better way of doing it than that. All our projects are in a common data environment. Okay, now that happens, in our case, that happens to be on the BC platform. And all our project staff and all our members of 820, and there's about 3,000 of us, have got access to that in one common data environment. So what we were trying to do then is find a better way of doing it rather than just hope, okay? And also absorb enormous amounts of time, and designers will, you know, they want to get it right, that's great, we want them to get it right, but we want them to get it right now, tomorrow or next week. We don't want to wait for 3 months' time while they ferret around on the internet and down libraries or employing third parties, okay? So doing nothing is not an option. Our design houses are all over the place. Okay, they're not all in one place. We don't have the luxury of a single building. They're geographically diverse, so the users could be anywhere from Swindon right through to the East End of London. They use various devices, laptops, tablets, phones even, but mainly laptops and PCs. Users are impatient, and I'm probably one of the best examples of that. You know, I click on something, I expect it to work, and I get a bit stressed when it doesn't work. The other thing which we were wanting to deliver to our users was a familiar environment at a cost-effective price, and easy to access. And above all, it needed to be current information and it needed to be reliable. We went to BC with this proposition, and we went along with a problem, I suppose, and we were looking to BC to help us develop a solution. Now, the TwexNet platform, TwexNet is what we call our common data environment from BC. As I mentioned, it holds project documents. There's about 5 terabytes of information on there. It's a platform which all our project teams understand, so it's a fairly natural place to go for them. And what better place to have it than you're working in your project, you want to check up on where's the nature reserves, you click on a link. You know, Nirvana, absolutely. So, here is Nirvana, served up to us. These are screenshots, by the way. We didn't want to work with a live demo, but you have to just take my word for it that the live demo works, but it does. So what have we got? We've got a simple little tab, and the tab says map. You know, it couldn't be clearer than that. There's no fancy names on it. And that is a display there of most, but not all, because we haven't fully populated, of our projects, okay? And if you click on any of those little dots, the little name tab down in the bottom left there brings up the project, and that'll take you straight into the project which you're interested in. The dots are coded, and I think no, we don't. Okay. So the dots are coded, and there's a filter on here, so you can filter the projects by depending which program they are. And we essentially think of our projects as being one of 4 programs. So it's clean water and dirty water, infrastructure and non-infrastructure is one of those quadrants. So you can filter out the projects which you're not interested in, and you can see up on the top left there where it says external data, and there's a whole load of layers: ancient woodland, areas of outstanding natural beauty, EA flood data, local. You can read the list for yourselves, but you get the idea. All these are environmental information, which actually you can go out there, you can find it. Good luck with the rest of your week, because that's how long it's going to take you to surf up that information, and that's if you're fairly focused on it. Imagine doing that across 1,500 projects. You know, the costs of this really, it's a very easy business case to write down. Okay, now, this is where we're going to throw caution to the wind. Video. Just press...
Next slide.
Next slide. Okay, and will that just run automatically, Steve?
If you press space, it probably will.
Press play. I would if I could only see the play button.
I think you can press space, but otherwise just move the mouse.
Okay.
To here.
Ah, right. Oh,
there you
not
go.
that fast.
To
There, thank you. Okay.
Is that playing? Now it's playing.
Now it's playing. Okay, so here we are. We've got an animated thing. You can zoom in on the map to an enormous level of detail. We'll come back to that in a moment about thing. And we've already selected there some of the layers. Here's the zoom in. This is how the various things get served up to you. Ancient woodland there, someone is surfing up, and there's all the ancient woodlands. How useful is that at the touch of a button from your project information area? There's the flood data. Comes from the EA website. It's not streamed live, but it's refreshed fairly regularly. That one there is a Sites of Special Scientific Interest. There's the local authority boundaries. Very important for us to know which local authority we're working in and which ones we have to contact. We haven't been quite brave enough to put down our relationship with them yet, but that's something we could do. Some cases it's better than others. And there is, what's that's gone on? I'm hoping, there they are, that's the listed buildings. Did we know that there was all those listed buildings about? That is, again, an incredible piece of useful information to us in knowing we're working in a street or in an area, oh dear, that one's a listed building, we can or cannot do certain things around it. That, I think, is ancient battlefields. That one, I'm not sure what they've done. They've done World Heritage Sites. Okay, that was another one they did. All of these things come up and they're all risks to our projects anyway. So if you're working in the environment at all, then you are, is that it, Steve? It's run, is it? Okay. So let's move on. This is one where somebody has done a sketch design, okay? Now, it looks fairly simple, doesn't it? And it is contrived, admittedly. But we have done this for real. So that says we're going to have 50 metres of high-density polythene, 100-metre MDPE main, okay. It's shown some lines there going to some houses. Somebody's written a vulnerable customer, listed building. All that information came from GeoConnect Plus, okay. And if you hover over that, underneath it, no. Nope. Go back up. Where's your up button, Steve? Oh, there we are. Okay. Sorry, that is connected, but... oh, there it is. Okay, so you can see there, that is connected to a street map, so I'm not going to do it just at the moment, but it is connected to street map, so you've got a view of it. I'm assured by the quantity surveyors that that is good enough for them to be able to do a costing at an option stage of a project, okay? You need a little bit more information in terms of bends and T's and that sort of thing, but no CAD work involved. You can knock that up in a matter of minutes, okay? And that's good enough to hand to your quantity surveyor, and you can say, okay, option A is going to cost X. Option B is going to cost Y. And we already know the risks. We know that we can't go near that listed building. We know we've got a vulnerable customer. Again, very useful information for us in terms of delivering a project. There's even a link there to our approved suppliers list. So when the QS is doing the costing of it, you can say, oh, okay, yes, the MDPE main, that has to come from supplier XYZ. So the advantages of this then, it's a single platform, okay, directly accessible from our project files. Ease of access, you click on it, you saw the demonstration just now. You can switch on or off as many layers as you like. In reality, switching on one layer at a time is more than enough because it becomes a bit of a mess otherwise. But you can put on all layers and see whether different things interact. In terms of licensing, of course, our folk within Thames Water and 820 have already got a TWEXNet license, so there's no additional licensing costs. There's no additional security checks or anything like that. There's no awkward conversations to be had with you're streaming this illegally and all that sort of thing. It's all bona fide and been sorted out. And of course you can access it from any device that's got access to the internet, which these days is probably most devices. So the future then is Steve. You are the future, sir.
Thank you, Paul. So, how are we doing on our time? Right. And it is a future. I mean, as we say, this is really just the culmination, this is the start of the journey. We've had 2 years of research working with our first real implementer, Paul, and I think what we've already achieved is fantastic, but certainly in terms of everyone involved in the project, and indeed the developers involved in the project, really we're now looking to where this can go. And the key thing here is always this is about the bringing together of these systems and the information within these systems. So yes, of course, this information has historically been available in many standalone ways in the way that Paul described, but to be able able to bring it into that common window, that window that is used as your day-to-day tool for working your common data environment. That's where we're driven by our capabilities. So yes, of course, we're looking at whatever the data is out there. And remember, it's not data for the sake of data, it's data that's going to help support those decisions. So in the case of land registry, knowing house prices, knowing therefore in optioneering where you're going to be able to make the, say, least disruption in terms of if there has to be any relocation or something, that's of course a very useful thing. But as Paul mentioned, there are also GIS. There's GIS data that is produced constantly by organizations, indeed by GIS specialists within organizations. And I think one thing we would stress is actually this is the window to really catalyze that production of GIS information that is at the moment produced by a small team, used to then provide the outcome of a decision, can suddenly be made instead available to all the parties within the supply chain. So I really hope that this is going to really start to build that market in the same way that the creation of, say, something like, for those of old enough to remember, the creation of Excel drove an entire industry in accounting. And third-party commercial data. So at the moment, what's been shown here has been largely public information, but actually, of course, there's an awful lot of information such as to do with even customer data, if dealt with correctly. Now, of course, with that brings the need around security and so on. But actually, this comes back to the fact that we've already solved many of these problems. The very essence of a common data environment is driven by things around users and access provisions and having access, say you only have access to this information on site. So what better way of saying that when you are on that site, these are the data that you can have access to and no one else can. So that I think is very important. And then self-serve. So more and more we want to allow our customers to be able to, and those GIS teams I mentioned, to be able to produce information, and rather than give it to us so that we can add it to the system and make it work, simply upload it to the CDE, have it processed, and then have it available to those sites, to those projects and so on. And indeed, we already have one customer. We have a number of customers who are helping us around the user stories and scenarios around this, who are already making inroads in this area by taking Google Earth, in fact, overlaying their own KML files on that, and then linking that to information within the common data environment within BC. Now, we, of course, and they want to bring that together so that in fact we can just overlay those KML files which they have uploaded to their particular project location, and they can immediately use that to connect to searches that return the documents that are relevant to, for example, those polygon areas on a map. And then we come to search and retrieval. So this is where instead of just looking for a set of documents and having those returned just in a listing, being able to show all of the projects or all the assets where those documents, based on particular criteria, based on the company that produced them or whatever, can be found, and looking for where those clusters of them are, or even going further into expected deliverables, where I'm expecting to have full health and safety and O&M across all my projects, but actually I can see a cluster where work needs to be done. That kind of connectivity is something that's only possible through this. And I'm going to show an example of this, being able to delve in even further and look at and actually identify some of the underlying attribution information on there and bring that through into the CDE. So I'm going to show my own video now, and this is some of that future in action. So what we're doing here is we're just searching for an area which we're able to zoom in. So immediately we've got the ability not just to navigate by zooming around the map, but actually by searching for postcode or searching for address. And then we can bring in this case, we brought in high quality digital terrain information. And then you can see after that, we've also overlaid the high quality topographic data to that, the terrain data. So we've got our contour information, we've got our digital terrain information, all of this putting what was previously just a folder that represented a project in some system, it's suddenly become a living thing where I can actually visually use that to make decisions. I can now also draw areas, as is being shown in this example here. I can find all of the, for example, residential properties that sit within there, and I can then even download all of the address information for those. As Paul said, here I am zooming in. I've shown the overlaying of flood data. We had that before. I can also zoom in, click on a project, and see that project, and click through and get to it in the CDE. So this is all about connecting seamlessly without having to log in again, without having to go to two systems, all through one window, all of the information that I need to make the right decisions about my asset portfolio and those projects I'm delivering. Thank you for listening. Thank you obviously for Paul and his contributions and really helping us as well in the driving of this. And absolutely thank you as well to the Ordnance Survey, to Paul, to PCSG, Adrian down there, and James as well from OS, all of whom without which we wouldn't be standing here and able to tell you about this fantastic project. So thank you.